The late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin after India set the terms of the ceasefire with Pakistan in the wake of Operation Sindhoor. US President Donald Trump continues to take credit for the ceasefire. Speaking in Riyadh, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "My administration brokered a ceasefire to stop the escalation and violence between India and Pakistan, and I used trade to a large extent. I told them, let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things you make beautifully." But this is in stark contrast and direct opposition to what the MEA said just a few hours back. First, listen in to the US President.
My greatest hope is to be a peacemaker and to be a unifier. I don't like war. We have the greatest military, by the way, in the history of the world. You know, I rebuilt our military in my first 4 years and rebuilt it into the most powerful military there is. And you saw that when I knocked out ISIS in 3 weeks. People said it would take 4 years, 5 years. I did it. We did it in 3 weeks. Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully.
And I'm joined by my colleague Siddhant Mishra on the broadcast. So Siddhant, clearly Donald Trump, facing frustration over his peace pitch in Ukraine and the Middle East. Now he's trying to claim credit for Operation Sindhoor and the impact it's had on the Pakistani state, saying that I am the one responsible for the easing of tensions between the two sides.
Well, yes, that's right, Ayushman. And in fact, it also applies to this case that if you speak lie 1,000 times, then, ultimately it becomes truth one day. Perhaps I think by this doctrine only, President Trump is making false statements day after day. Perhaps, in fact, yesterday what he said was while speaking at U.S.-China trade, deal forum. Today he is speaking in Riyadh. Both these locations, events have nothing to do with India-Pakistan issue. But despite that, Trump is speaking on this issue. As you rightly said, he was desperately looking for a ceasefire in Europe. He couldn't get it. He was looking at in West Asia. He got it, but then again ceasefire collapsed. So now, he is taking credit for the understanding reached between India and Pakistan. But, today, in fact, the Ayushman Ministry of External Affairs has put a record straight, perhaps for the first time on record. The Ministry of External Affairs' spokesperson, said officially that, that India had mounted an extremely effective attack on key Pakistani Air Force bases. That was the reason Pakistanis now willing to stop firing and military action. And in fact, spokesperson again reiterated and said, let me be clear, it was of a force of Indian arms that compelled Pakistan to stop its firing. And in fact, today at a press briefing, spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal went on to give the exact chronology of the calls made.
Absolutely. Siddhant, let's listen into what Ranveer Jaiswal said. Stay on the line with me. Now, when it comes to this entire pitch coming in from Donald Trump that I used trade to broker this ceasefire between India and Pakistan, clearly he's playing to the galleries given the fact that his tariff policy is facing so much criticism back home. And now he's trying to gain some leverage over that entire political narrative by claiming that he used trade to broker the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. But this is in direct opposition to what the MEA said, what Siddhant was talking about just a few hours back. Listen to what Ranveer Jaiswal, the MEA spokesperson, said.
From the time of Operation Sindhoor, commenced on 7th May, till the understanding on cessation of firing and military action on 10th May, there were conversations between Indian and US leaders on the evolving military situation. The issue of trade did not come up in any of these discussions.
And Siddhant, there you have it. Ranveer Jaiswal making it very clear trade was not part of any conversation with the United States. But Trump in Riyadh saying that I used trade to broker this ceasefire. So the MEA completely dismissing what the US president is claiming in Riyadh.
Well, absolutely. In fact, Ayushman, we have been speaking to our sources since 10th of May, perhaps trying to understand what President Trump is saying, whether there was any kind of mediation or done by United States, etc., etc. And each time around, we were going to the officers here in the government of India, those who were involved in the scheme of things. Perhaps, they gave us all the details, perhaps how things actually happened. And today, for the first time, Ministry of External Affairs have put records, things on record. Perhaps given the chronology, explained that how, because of the force, armed force that have been put by the Indian armed forces, Pakistan had to go down on knees, and they in fact contacted their High Commission here in Pakistan for Ayushman, and High Commission informed the Ministry of External Affairs that DGMO wants to reach out to Indian DGMO, and that's how call was set up at around 3:35 in the afternoon, and after which the understanding was reached. But as you rightly said, President Trump was desperately looking for ceasefire in Europe and West Asia. He couldn't get one. So perhaps the understanding which has been reached between India and Pakistan, now he wants to take credit for it. But there are no takers of what President Trump is saying here in India, not at the government level and not at the public level also. There is a lot of criticism of what he is doing on a daily basis. And in fact, there are no takers, because as I said before, he's following a simple doctrine that if I lie 1,000 times, that may become a truth one day. But he also needs to understand that the issue of Kashmir is very, very sensitive for the people of India. And in fact, today Ranveer Jaiswal also clarified that there cannot be any mediation over the Kashmir issue. In fact, Government of India's policy is very clear that Kashmir is and will always be an integral part of India. There can only be one issue, that is a Pak-occupied country. But despite that, Donald Trump saying, and also would like to remind you, Ayushman, even in the run-up to the election, if you remember, Donald Trump said once that I offered Prime Minister Modi to help last time around when Balakot happened. At that time also, Prime Minister Modi refused his proposal. And this time around again, there was not a single conversation which happened regarding trade or mediation with the United States. And Indian government's position is very, very clear. No matter what President Trump says, and if with this speed he will go on to make these claims, perhaps he will end up losing his credibility, and perhaps people will stop taking him seriously in India as well.
Right. So credibility is a very generous word for Donald Trump when it comes to these claims, Siddhant. But at the same time, Donald Trump, while he might pander to the MAGA base by making such claims on the world of diplomatic ties, the counter questions come in pretty fast. And that's the counter that came in from Ranveer Jaiswal when he made it very clear that trade was not part of any discussion with the United States after Operation Sindhoor commenced. So
Network 18 decimates Times Internet with over 6 times more unique users on social media. Network 18, the undisputed leader of news networks, way ahead of the times.